Hello, FBC. Today we're going to be looking at Revelation 14. I'm not going to be looking at the whole chapter. I just want to look at a few verses together. I want to spend a little bit more time just applying it to today because I think it has a lot to say to us today, given all that we're going through with COVID and just a difficult season just as a country and as a church. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into Revelation 14. So I'm going to share my screen here so you can see what I'm looking at, but of course, feel free to grab your Bible and follow along with me. So I want to begin by looking at these angels that are introduced, beginning with verse 6. Now, the first one has an eternal gospel, and this isn't necessarily the gospel of Jesus Christ. Rather, this angel says, fear God and give him glory because his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water. So the good news is that God reigns and that his judgment is coming. That's a theme that we've seen throughout Revelation so far. So that's the first one. The second one declares that Babylon is fallen. So if you've been following along in Revelation, you know that Babylon is a symbolic way to refer to Rome, but really Babylon is this idea of an oppressive, coercive, manipulative empire that destroys God-fearers, that causes idolatry and turns people away from the Lord. And notice that she has made the nations drink the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality. We'll come back to that later, but just that is her specific sin that's mentioned there, Babylon's sin, that is. Then there's the third angel, and this is the angel that I want to focus on. This angel speaks in a loud voice and refers back to chapter 13 by condemning any who worship the beast and who receive its mark on its forehead will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured out full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest, day or night. These worshipers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name. This is a depiction of eternal torment, of hell, of the place where all of those who do not follow the Lamb, who worship the beast instead and have his mark, this is the picture of their judgment here. And that's obviously a very sobering passage. But what is also interesting to me is the verse that follows immediately after that is verse 12, which says, here is a call for endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. Now, why would there be a command like this or a statement like this right after this description of judgment on those who refuse to worship God, those who worship the beast? I think this occurs here because this book is written to believers, and it's not written to believers so that we will boast in our place as God's people over against those who have rejected God. I think first and foremost, it's written as a warning to us to remain faithful, right? So this is the point, right? It's a call to endurance. It's a call to endurance. It's not only a call to those who keep the commandments, but it's also a call to continue keeping the commandments. Faith here could be really translated as faithfulness or fidelity. And so by giving us a picture of the judgment that will come for those who reject God, this passage is saying we are still in that danger as believers. So our salvation, our faith in Jesus does not let us sit back in arrogance or in laziness. It actually calls us to continue to endure, to continue to persevere until we reach the end. Now, this is connected back up to earlier in this chapter. So earlier in this chapter, we have this beautiful vision, verses 1-5, of the 144,000, which is a reference back to earlier in the book of these people who have been faithful to God unto death, and now they are God's people, and they were marked with the name of the Father. And they are specifically called or referred to as, back up in verse 4, those who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And that's why the call to endurance comes down here. It's because we are those who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Now, who is the Lamb? Again, it's this repeated theme in Revelation that we follow the Lamb who was slain. We follow a Lamb that will give us victory, but it does not come easily. It does not come without pain and suffering and difficulty. That's why Jesus, when he said, when he called the disciples, said, if anyone would come after me, pick up your cross, right? It's a call to die to self. And in fact, there's this interesting little phrase here. Verse 4, those who follow the Lamb are those who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. Now, I don't think he's saying that they're literally virgins. Remember, down in verse 8, that Babylon is condemned for her sexual immorality. What he's saying is that they are virgins in the sense that they have not been defiled by Babylon's sexual immorality. They have not given in to the lie, is also what it says in verse 5, that those who follow the Lamb are those who have endured by not being deceived, not getting sucked into the world's way of doing things. So that's kind of what this passage is getting at, is this idea that we need to seriously consider what it is we've been saved from, and knowing that should inspire us to continue to endure and to be faithful. So I just want to pause here for a second and just kind of think about how this applies to us, because we have to remember what Revelation does. The point of Revelation, the reason that John wrote Revelation, is so that the church could see more clearly, so that we could see. It's a revelation. It's an apocalypse of Jesus Christ, so that we can see things from God's perspective. And what John is saying is, if we see what he sees here, it will totally change our priorities. It will change how we live. And the first thing to note is that I think sometimes it's hard for us as Christians today to read passages like this that talk about faithfulness and endurance in the midst of suffering and persecution, and think that, well, it really doesn't apply to us, because we really are not facing any sort of persecution in the United States. But this does apply to all Christians because of the warning that comes here. The warning here is not simply to endure in the midst of persecution. The warning is a call to faithfulness in the midst of a world that is constantly trying to deceive us and get us focused on things that ultimately do not matter compared to our eternal state. And that's exactly what John is trying to get us to see, is we are so often distracted by things that don't matter that we don't realize that heaven and hell hang in the balance. And instead we get focused on these smaller things that do not have eternal consequences. And so what I want to ask you today is, after reading this, after hearing this call to be faithful, I want you to ask yourself, during this difficult season of COVID and all the just difficulty and chaos that we're seeing in our world, has your commitment to Jesus been compromised in any way? Because we live in a world that is constantly trying to deceive us. But what we are called to do as Christians is to remember God's judgment is coming. That we should direct all of our efforts to be faithful to the Lamb, to avoid that judgment. Now, that doesn't mean that our deeds save us from judgment. What it means is that we are called to be faithful to the Lamb. Our salvation, our believing in Jesus, does not mean we just sit back and just lazily go through this life, and no matter what we do, we're going to be saved. Those who believe in Jesus, those who have faith in Jesus, will be faithful to Jesus. That's the point of this chapter. That is how we avoid this eternal judgment that awaits any who don't have the name of the Father written on them. And so I want to ask you, have you been seduced by the world, and have your priorities been thrown off or thrown off kilter because of the troubled times that we live in? Because if we see things that John sees, all of the things that we get so concerned about and frustrated and anxious about, I think don't matter as much when we realize that there are eternal matters at stake in our lives each and every day. So a couple of questions I want to ask myself, and I think it's worth all of us asking, is my view on masks informed more by my political views or the commands of God? Am I a person who follows the Constitution first and foremost, or am I a person who follows the Lamb? Am I angry about how a person votes more than I'm concerned about their eternal state? You see, what is a vote compared to what we see here in verses 9, 10, 11, that the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest. You see, we ought to be far more concerned about if somebody knows Jesus than what their political views are. Have the circumstances in my life prevented me from faithfully enduring? So have I used COVID as an excuse to stop evangelizing, to stop pursuing God, to stop pursuing others, to stop serving? You see, some of us are at risk because of COVID, but that does not mean we haven't been called to faithfully endure. Now, I'm not saying that what that means is we need to put ourselves in unsafe situations. What I'm saying is that requires that we need to be more creative, not less creative than we were a year ago, to continue doing the things that God has called us to do, to love him and love others. Now, some of us are so concerned about what's going on in our world that I fear that it's bringing out immaturity in us, that we have given up our Christian commitment and they've been overridden by political or personal concerns about how things are being handled. You see, we are people who are called to be faithful to the Lamb. What Revelation teaches us is that our life can get far worse than what it is right now. And even were that the case, we would still be called to follow the Lamb wherever he goes. The mark of our commitment to Jesus is if we're faithful to him when it's difficult, if we follow the commands of God when it is difficult. And it is only in that way that we will make it into his kingdom. It's a sobering thought to think that some people are going to a place of eternal torment. But the amazing thing is that God has given us a message to save people from that by evangelizing, and he's given us the church to encourage and support one another to make sure that no one that we know who's made a confession of faith fails to reach that goal. We're called to disciple and encourage one another to endure in the faith, to remain faithful to Jesus in the midst of all this going on. And so the question for us is, do we see what truly matters? That what truly matters is a person's commitment to Jesus. Do they know Jesus? Do they have the name of the Father written on their forehead? And if they don't, we should be concerned most of all about that above everything else. So with that in mind, let's pray together. Heavenly Father, this chapter is a reminder that judgment is coming, that hell is a real place, and that we will not get there we will not avoid it by accident. To avoid hell means that we not only believe in Jesus and trust in Jesus, but that we are committed to following him no matter the cost. And so, Father, I pray that this vision that John gives us would reprioritize our lives, that we would do what you've called us to do, even if that requires doing things differently, doing things more creatively, giving up our rights and our preferences in order to serve others, in order to love you, in order to share this message of good news with people with whom we disagree on so many things. Father, we still believe that the most important news that this world needs to hear is the good news of Jesus Christ. Help us to be faithful in these days to your commands and follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Amen. Well, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a great day.